Well, it is a pleasure, and thank you for joining us on the Coffee Court. This is where we digest and ask critical questions, especially questions that matter. I know for sure that globally, all institutions go through turbulence, they go through crisis. But like Martin Luther King Jr. says, what makes a leader is not where he stands in the moments of comfort, but in the moments of controversy. So how can institutions manage turbulence so that at the end of the day, they are able to survive and thrive? Joining me to discuss this is Alan Senyonda, the project manager for COVID recovery and resilience program at the Private Sector Foundation. My pleasure, Alan. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and good evening, viewers and those listening to us.
You manage a project called COVID Recover. Are we still in the COVID period?
All right. Thank you very much. We are post-COVID COVID period, and we have left the recovery mode, and we are now in resilience. And that is why we are also approaching the end of this project.
So let's now discover and discuss the resilience of different institutions. I don't know whether you agree with what I do agree with, that all companies go through turbulence.
Yes.
What is your take on this?
All companies actually at one point will go through a turbulent time. And what distinguishes companies is their ability to govern themselves. And that is usually what we call corporate governance. Putting in checks and balances, having the ability to control and direct an institution. So how you do that and how you situate that, how you actually manage to separate management from board, and with them knowing their different roles of these levels, is very critical in helping an institution thrive and survive through turbulent times.
Who does the check and the balance?
Now, all right, who does the checks and who does the balances? You have what we call, in every institution of reputable mind, should have what we call a board of directors. And those are the ones responsible for things like accountability, transparency, security of an institution. And then you have the management, which does the day-to-day work. If a well-instituted organization will ensure that at management level, they have a more of ensuring that day-to-day activities are done in such a manner which is acceptable to the standards of the institution and those who take care of the institution at board level. Other institutions have even gone a step further to say, thank you very much, you can have management, you can have even a board of directors. Others have even gone to go ahead and say, we will have an advisory council.
So why all these? You have a board, you have an advisory, you have a CEO. I know at PSFU you have the CEO,
yes,
who heads many other people.
Yes.
You have a board. So why have all these members? They seem to be boards that actually consume money for institutions. Why have them?
Well, boards of directors, for example, in a private sector institution, a board may be those who have actually shares in that particular company. At an institution like the private sector, they usually don't have shares, but have vested interest in seeing that the institution stays, grows, and actually thrives. So that would necessarily mean that the board directors must be men and women of good reputation, experience, diversity, and yes, this is the kind of caliber of people you'd want to put at the board level. Now, allow me to add something. I tell you, some institutions are so good at that they will even have an advisory council. And usually, advisory council are members previous to boards. Example can be board chairpersons, who then, after serving their tenure on the board, are elevated to a group of advisors of previous board chairs who will then sit back and ensure that the board is advised on a number of items which are of long-term view.
Okay.
Yes, so you would have three levels. You'd have management, you'd have a board, and then you have an advisory council to help ensure that the board is aware of history as well as be aware to look to the future.
Maybe that applies to institutions that have actually grown up. What about if you're managing institutions at a lower scale, maybe business at the small scale industry level? So how would we handle if we don't have the capacity to pay the board members, we don't have the capacity to run the operation, we don't have the capacity to actually facilitate all of these? So what happens anyway?
All right. So let us use the example you've just given of a small, an MSME of any sorts. As I've said, that at that level, it is usually the shareholders of the company who are the board members of that company, plus men and women of good repute who are there to support them in ensuring that there is transparency, number one, accountability, number two, and security of the institution. Now, I've talked about things like being paid or being facilitated. The core of a board of directors is not being paid or being facilitated, but rather ensuring the ability of the institution or organization to thrive. So you could have board members who are actually not being paid, but are literally just facilitated to ensure that the organization keeps moving.
And do you think they'll give that the critical attention that you require from them if you're not paying them?
May I inform you that one such board is that of the private sector foundation. They are only but facilitated to sit. They don't have shares in the institution, but they are of critical importance, and they see the institution as a critical place to be and to guide the management in areas of importance. Okay. So yes, there are boards which are not paid per se, but rather facilitated. They exist.
So back to issues, how do we handle an institution if it's going through so many turbulence? I know this year, the many government institutions that have gone through crisis. Some have closed up, others still in operation, others they are just surviving, and if not, they're just maybe thriving. How would an institution handle through turbulence times?
Right. Turbulent times dictate that an institution or organization, and we have gone through a turbulent time, for example, the COVID COVID times. These were turbulent times also. If you look at some sectors, they pretty much closed down. A sector like tourism completely closed down. So turbulent times will come sooner rather than later. Now, how do you go through such a time is having set up systems. And these systems and structures that support you through such a hard time. It does not mean that a company may not close down. But in such a situation, even when a company or an organization closes down, it will be done in a systematic manner. So basically, it's about having those checks and balances to help you go through a period systematically and without much ado.
What do you mean by systematic?
Systematic.
Go through such hard times.
For example, if a company is going through, let's say, a period of less sales, you can call that recession at a much bigger level. How does a company handle a situation in which less sales, less revenues, and yet you have staff to take care of? In such a situation, a good board and a good management would have ensured that they have built up reserves. So if you follow good accounting principles, good management principles, good governance principles, there would be some kind of buffer stock.
That's in the normal situation.
In a normal situation, which would have carried them through some period of turbulence. If that period then persists, then they begin to build up measures on how to cut their costs, but without much pain. So the turbulent times is that the board and management, a well laid out board and management, will have structures and system to help you sail through those times. It is sailing through a storm, and how you have built the boat will determine how smooth the boat will sail through this turbulence. So it is really a matter of how you have built the boat, how you have built the system, how you have built the structure.
And what sort of team player is needed in such hard times? I'm talking about people that had institutions, people that had different business organizations. So what sort of skills does a team player require only to handle through such turbulence times, where there are lost sales, and then things are not going in the right manner?
Yes. So what you need, first of all, is people skills. And that's why we have institutions with people at the top having a very good sense of encouraging and managing their juniors. That's very critical.
That doesn't put bread on
Yes.
table. Doesn't.
It doesn't put bread on table, but it may put a few other crumbs on that table, which may not necessarily recover the bread. But it's the ability to, you as the leader of the institution, to assist and support your team to go through this hard time. Others do it differently. For example, others will give you very good recommendations where you're on your way out. Others will simply say, okay, if you have nothing on your way out, can we find a way to maintain you here in these turbulent times as we sail this through? So it's a matter of managing the people in that time. And a good leader at the top will always support his team to go through. And that is usually also supported by the board.
That sounds like a defensive mechanism.
Yeah.
It may work in the short run, in the long run it doesn't help.
Okay.
It never helps.
So, then you switch to gear number 2, innovation. Another very important skill that senior members of an institution and organization should always have is innovation. Because, as we have already said, putting aside some buffer store is only usually for a shorter period. You cannot save your way, for example, to richness. You know that very much. Just because you're saving doesn't really mean that you have the capability to go rich. No, saving is just only a part of the solution. So even putting a buffer stock is only part of the solution. Being innovative enough to know that you can't put all your eggs in one basket, that you have to diversify, that you have to do. These are the elements which keeps the organization moving is critical. So, on top of you having a people manager, you must have also very innovative minds at the top to keep you moving in all directions possible so that you're firing on all cylinders and you're ensuring that the institution is growing so that when the bad times come, you have enough to sail you through. In the short term, in the longer term, well, the innovation should also ensure that you have other avenues to earn from.
So what is required of the workers that you lead? How should the worker behave still when it comes to such turbulence and hard times?
Well, the worker or the employee is a complicated person. Naturally, if they feel safe in the institution, if they feel that the institution will take care of them, usually workers of that caliber will choose to stay a little longer. The challenge you're usually going to have mostly is the talented worker. An employee who is always being sought out for. Usually those are the ones you should pay a lot of attention, because once you begin losing talent and losing that kind of kindredness of innovation, usually that also pulls your institution down faster. So how do you ensure that your, others call them most valuable players, others call them innovative persons and things like that. How do you ensure they stay in that situation? That is the talent which the chief executive must have on his sleeves.
I am here managing a project which is almost coming to the end. with the few facts and figures you've put on board, how many businesses have actually been able to be resilient? Because you manage a COVID recovery and resilient program at the PSFU. How many have they actually been resilient?
Oh, we're happy to report a few facts here and there. We have managed to support 744 companies to stay afloat over the period of time.
Where are these ones? I see many of them have actually closed.
Where are they?
These are Ugandan companies.
Yes, they are Ugandan companies, and you will be surprised that Ugandans are actually resilient people. Ugandans are actually very innovative people. Yes, where are they? They are all over the place. Some we have supported under the area of certification at Uganda National Bureau of Standards. Yes, that program is still ongoing. 319 companies have been certified. You may ask yourself why, and the answer is this: some of our companies didn't have the capacity to pay off the certification. So hand-holding those ones through the process of certification has been a big deal for them to stay afloat, and staying afloat is already being able to be resilient and move forward. So we have really touched over 744 through, among others, as I've said, certification, literacy, trainings, trainings among others in the area of procurement, in the area of insurance, in the area of governance. Yes, we have supported some companies, and they have indeed stayed afloat.
How are the companies dealing with such turbulence times that you think as a country, Uganda, we are not actually adopting as a mechanism of dealing with such hard times?
Hard times are kind of difficult to deal with. So how have these companies been able? And I can report to you that most of them are just through sheer innovation, being innovative, having the ability to be agile, flexible, aggressive at times, moving into areas you hadn't been in before, strengthening those areas that you have managed to get a positive edge. That is how most of the companies we have been looking at, that's how they have survived. And that's how they have thrived. And now that the economy is seemingly on a positive, we are going to see more of that trend taking place. One of the areas, for example, which was hit hard is the area of tourism. Recall that in the times of COVID, there were no tourists. Game parks were closed, hotels were closed, tour operators couldn't work, and all these other things. And what are we discovering is even after COVID came Ebola. And what are we saying? That we are getting on reports that the number of tourists coming down to Uganda, that the bookings are so much on the rise that the sector is feeling a bouncing effect. And they are coming back. So it's a positive place to be.
As we plan to part shots, you've heard of statements that say when the going gets rough, the tough must get going.
Yes.
As we part shots, your final recommendation, especially to the business people out there, on how they can actually handle such turbulence and such hard times.
Thank you very much. What businesses should know is that tough times will come. And how you prepare yourself for the tough times usually dictates how you will sail through these tough times. The good thing is most of our businesses know that there are business cycles, and that as you make sales and you're on the increase in making sales, you always know that there are times when you will sell less. So my encouragement to our members, our business communities is put in place systems, structures, and buffers, and be innovative enough to know that tough times will come, and be ready for them when they come.
Thank you, Mr. Alan Senyondwa. He manages a project called COVID Recovery and Resilience Program at the Private Sector Foundation. For sure, when the going gets tough, Whether you like it or not, the turf must get going. This is the Coffee Court. My name is Fred Makubuya.